It's brand new and it's f***ing awesome. Hey there, I'm John. This is Two Brothers RC, and this is the Freewing F-16 90mm version 2. It's a big, heavy porker of a jet, but damn if it doesn't fly like that at all. Let's see how it stacks up to the unbiased as I can be Two Brothers review system. If you're new to Two Brothers RC, we put airplanes through a 25-point review system and let you make up your mind on whether it's worth getting. Agility tends to be what we focus on the most. A model aircraft lives and dies by how agile it is. If it can't avoid obstacles because it's nose-heavy and sluggish, it'll be prone to living a very short and very frustrating existence. Fortunately, the F-16 is not like that at all, at least not if you move the battery as far back as possible.
This plane is heavy, but it does not fly like it at all. I'm pretty shocked at it, actually. How does it backflip? Or does it backflip at all? Let's find out.
With the jet balanced at the CG mark, or a little behind it up to 20mm or so, it's flyable and it's fun. But it's also nose heavy, and it's not really the kind of flying that I prefer. At 40mm behind the mark, I found that all of the flying that I like to do was super easy to perform. It's right around where the full-scale jet balances too, so a well-tuned AS3X Plus gyro will be your buddy here to help keep the plane stable enough to control and give you that true-to-scale experience that you're going to miss out on if you're flying a nose-heavier F-16.
Now we've got the center of gravity balanced about 35 to 40mm behind the marks, and this jet has really livened up. Definitely not nose heavy in the slightest. Look at these slow rolls we get with the AS3X Plus. Almost no altitude drop.
With the jet balanced at the CG mark or a little behind it up to 20mm, it's flyable, but it's also nose heavy and not really the kind of flying that I prefer. At 40mm behind the marks, I found that Cobra maneuvers,
wow,
flat spins, inverted flight, and landings were all super easy to perform. It's right about where the full-scale jet balances too, so a well-tuned AS3X Plus gyro will be your buddy here to help keep the plane stable enough to control and give you that true-to-scale experience that you're going to miss out on if you're flying a nose-heavier F-16, or, let's face it, a Cessna shaped like an F-16. Not my kind of thing, but everyone's got their preferences. The large amount of weight that this jet is carrying on its wings would make you think that it would be very prone to accelerated stalls and that it would feel sluggish in the sky. However, it defies my expectations here. Now, to be fully upfront with you, I was one of those people who looked at it and scoffed on Discord, and I said that it would be way too damned heavy to fly well. Here's to you, Chuck, the mod father. You're right, and I'm wrong. It flies incredibly well, and I'm so happy to say that. This is largely because it's a cropped delta wing, which makes it less prone to stalling and makes it easier to abuse angle of attack, but also because I upgraded the Stabilator servos to high-tech HS85MG units, and I use longer Dubrow servo arms before even flying it at all. Not that the stock servos are bad, they're not, far from it even. They're just not as fast, nor as powerful, nor do they move the stabilators as far as I want them to move. Also, I bought this jet, so I modified it to my preferences out of the box. Before someone says that I should fly it stock, there's like 40 other channels that are going to fly it stock, guys. They'll show you what the stock experience is like. Smoky Mountain RC is one of those people. There's nothing wrong with flying it stock, it's just not what I feel people come to this channel to see. And I think that's for the best because the F-16 does fly really well on the setup that I've chosen. In fact, about the only maneuver I couldn't get it to perform was the Cobra spin.
3, 2, 1. Almost.
It was close.
The weight is just too much for the stabs. They can't wrench it around like the 64mm F-14.
I love the Cobra spin so much.
So it won't Cobra spin, but most F-16s won't either. No love lost there, just a little disappointed and expectedly so. It's still a gorgeous aircraft that flies exceptionally well for being so damned heavy. But something to note, that heaviness does work in its favor by making it very resistant to turbulence and wind. Even in strong winds that we often find at the airport here in North Carolina, the jet powers right through it. AS3X Plus helps here, of course.
Handles that turbulence, no problem with AS3X Plus, as long as you turn the gains up. With the nose held up like that, you can see the stabs fluttering to correct for roll and pitch with the Elevon wing type setup that we're using for F-16s and other similar type jets like this. It's pretty impressive technology.
If you're flying in wind or you live in a windy area, this jet coupled with AS3X Plus makes a huge difference, aside from the fact that I'm relying on AS3X Plus to begin with just to keep it stable enough to fly at the CG I'm using. I actually think that the 70mm F-16 would suffer here quite a bit due to how light it is, while the 90 just powers through the turbulence and doesn't care. The big amount of weight that this Viper is carrying also helps it carve clean lines through the sky, and it gives it a presence that I just didn't expect to see at all. I'm not normally happy to be wrong, but in this case I am definitely happy about it, and it's just another case for my argument that there's more to an airplane and how it flies than just its wing load itself. Wing loading calculators don't factor in lifting bodies, wing shape, control surface authority, or any of the other big variables that heavily influence how a plane flies. It's impossible to truly dial something down to X amount of wing load as good, because as we're seeing here, this jet flies f***ing incredible. Pigs truly do fly.
I gotta admit, I like it on the 8-cell system. I'm shocked that I do. I normally don't care much for 8 cells, but I don't notice much of a difference in how it handles. It's flying amazingly well on the SMC 4400 HVs and the CNHL 4000 packs that we're flying right now. And I'm having no problem at all getting it into these inverted high alpha passes either. As I throttle up and I push the nose up, get it to start slowing down, and then throttle in as it comes to a dead stop in the sky. There we go. And let the AS3X Plus kind of help stabilize it, and then slow it down, bring it down to the ground, and then just kind of keep throttling in. No problems at all doing this. The CNHLs do a great job. The SMCs do a great job. Really, you can't go wrong with either option. You will get a little bit more power out of the SMCs. They are lighter batteries, and they are, I think, a little bit more expensive. But the CNHLs definitely do a good job. Give me Cobra on 8 cells though. 3, 2, 1. In fact, you can. Very well. Did you catch that, dear?
You know it. So what feels better, the 6 or the 8?
Honestly, I can't tell much of a difference between the two, and that sucks for me because I always like to talk about how amazing the 6-cell batteries are and the setups are, but honestly, I might say that the 8 is better. I haven't noticed any discernible difference. I've been able to do better inverted high alpha passes because I have more thrust available to work with.
On to the agility review section of this video, the F-16 hits all 5 criteria that I'm looking for. It can be easily flown in this narrow runway corridor. It's very easy to make less nose heavy even without the tray mod. All you have to do is just push the battery all the way back. It takes off and it lands without struggling. Seriously, once you get a feel for it, this jet is an absolute breeze to take off and land with. It has plenty of thrust for maneuvering too, and stall recovery is stupid easy. Just throttle up and push the nose down. The F-16 gets a 5 out of 5. Before we move on to the flight time section, one thing that I've wanted to talk about here for a bit is that I feel that you should find your own path through this hobby. Don't just emulate me or your favorite YouTube personalities. I feel that you should use influencers and fellow pilots as people to inspire you to do great things. On the same note, don't just follow the manual's recommendations religiously. Find what works for you, and slowly move the center of gravity forward or further back until it's where you feel comfortable flying. Just because I like 40mm behind the marks doesn't mean that you will. It takes time and practice to build up the confidence and stick skills to fly that far behind the center of gravity marks. But I'm always there to help on Discord if you have questions or if you just need motivation. I mean it when I say this. If I can do it, you can do it too. Flight time is excellent with mixed throttle. If you're an all-gas, no-brakes kind of pilot, you'll find that it tops out at around 3 minutes. If you're an aviator who doesn't want to destroy their batteries, managing throttle will get you about 5 minutes of spirited, enjoyable flying on both the 6 and 8 cell setups.
5 minutes of flight too on the maiden flight. That's not half bad. And that included landing and taking back off again. So with the SMC 5900s, we got 5 minutes 22 seconds, and we landed with 3.73 volts per cell, 18%, 22.4 overall on the pack voltage. And the battery is warm.
But there's a catch. Getting 5 minutes of flight will require that you fly conscientiously, meaning that you'll need to fly with mixed throttle, not stick pegging. You'll need to make a deliberate choice to fly at a variety of airspeeds, performing a variety of maneuvers. You are not going to get 5 minutes of all gas, no brakes out of this porker. Ever since Motion RC sent over the Freewing Zeus that I kind of booped into a tree, I've had a spare 8-cell motor laying around. Now I can start showing you the performance differences between 6 and 8 cells on these airframes between the different packs that I've got. And I have to say, I'm really impressed at how well this jet carries itself on the heavier 8-cell setup. This jet is a big fat piggy on both systems, but with the 8-cell system you're adding even more weight and a heavier motor to the wing load equation. Yet,
it's just f***ing awesome. It really flies good, man. Look at this thing come in. If I hadn't told you that was an 8-cell system, you probably would have assumed it was a 6-cell based on the way it settled in on the wheels.
You'd never even know if I hadn't told you that last landing was an 8-cell setup, would you? Do I recommend the 8-cell setup? For once, yes, I do. If you're going to fly 8 cells, I highly recommend running the SMC 4S 4400 HV batteries, or if you'd rather fly C&HL packs, their 4000 class LiPos flew very well too, even if they were slightly heavier than the SMC packs. It flies great on the 6-cell system too, and it flies even better, somehow, on the 8-cell setup. I have no issues performing aerobatics at all with it, and it doesn't feel heavy at all in the air. For being a big fat porker on the ground, it does seem that pigs truly do fly. If you go 6 cells, stick with SMC 5900 lithium high voltage batteries or C&HL 5000 to 6000 class LiPos. And don't forget to visit kmrcmodel.com and get yourself an inexpensive customizable afterburner unit that bolts right into the Freewing motor. This is a top-notch burner system and you're missing out if you don't have one. It even allows you to run different colors with the same controller too. So far, we're 10 for 10 with the F-16, with great flight times and great agility, but traditionally, landing gear is where I tend to knock a point off the scoring, and that's what's going to happen today. The gear on this jet is a work of art, highly intricate and functional with fantastic, best-in-class suspension, and unfortunately, hard wheels. The shocks will do a lot of the heavy lifting to avoid transferring force to the fuselage. I'm still waiting for companies to start normalizing lightweight rubber tires with model aircraft. Not only do they sound better, they track straighter, they transfer less force to the fuselage gear mounts, and on top of that, they're more scale too. Takeoff and landing are both a breeze with this jet, even without the nose wheel gyro. On my setup, I had to choose between the air brake or the nose wheel gyro, so unfortunately I did have to choose the brake. Once you get the nose wheel adjusted so it tracks mostly straight on its own, you're pretty much good to go. I did find that the jet took off best with flaperons dropped and full gyro gains, otherwise it kinda just launched into the air on my aggressive, true-to-scale center of gravity.
With the 8-cell setup, we are now balancing right here, which is about 40 millimeters behind. This is gonna be fun.
With landing, it was also pretty easy. Drop flaperons fully, come in with moderate angle of attack, throttle up just a little bit before touchdown. 30, 20, 10, butter, every single time. Moving on to fit and finish, every aspect of the way this jet looks just screams perfection. The paint is excellently well done.
Pretty good system. You don't need screws anymore, and you don't need those little push buttons. Although I kind of like them, but this latch system is pretty cool because all you got to do is use one hand, grab, push open, and then pop it back on.
The foam isn't weird or messed up coming out of the box. All of the hinges are gapless with full flying stabilators. It comes with decals instead of stickers, and the decals adhere to the paint. What else can you really ask for? 5 out of 5, simply outstanding. The F-16 does come with metal servos, but as I mentioned, I replaced the stabilator servos with Hitec HS85 MG units linked below for more travel, speed, and torque. I don't normally have any ESC overheating issues at all, or if I do, it at least has the good graces to happen in the air. This one unfortunately caught fire in my hangar when I plugged in a battery. Real Skywalker of it to do that to me, huh? I got in touch with Motion RC support, who sent over a replacement blue 120 amp ESC which worked flawlessly on both the 6 and 8 cell setups. Thanks for standing by your products, Motion. It's great to see that they've kept their commitment to improve customer service. The lighting system on this jet has to be some of the best that I've ever seen, and the battery tray is absolutely fantastic, with room to extend it further back if you follow the mod guide later on in the vid. Overall, the F-16 scores 23 out of 25. The ESC overheating issue might not be an issue going forward for newer units. I suspect that Freewing will be replacing the red Skywalker ESCs, which have torched 3 or 4 different F-16s that I've seen by this point. None of them melted, all of them appear to still be flyable, but man, does it suck to plug in a plane and see black smoke billowing out of both ends. The inside of my F-16 looks like a toasted marshmallow, and it stunk like ass for several days. ESC issues aside, the jet is absolutely worth getting, and you're definitely not going to find a better looking or flying F-16 out there at this scale. Yes, I will be putting my 80mm E-flite F-16 up against it using the tier system very soon, so keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. I don't make money recommending this jet, but I will recommend it anyhow. It's incredible, and you're missing out if you don't snag one from Motion RC. Now, you could get it from RC Castle too, but I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you've got a case of perpetual butthurt or you live in an area where the shipping won't be outrageous.
Just a phenomenal flying jet, it really is. With the HS85 MG servo upgrade for the extra stab throw and the Dubro Hitec servo arms that are heavy duty that I put on here that I picked up from Hangar 18 Hobbies here in Cary, North Carolina. This thing, it's insane. I can't believe how good this flies. Now, this has all been flown on the brand new Elevon wing type setup. So to give you an idea of how that works, I've got the differential stabilators wired up as Elevons. So channel 2, channel 3, this is the flapped servo, and this one is wired to the flap. And I've got it programmed with AS3X Plus so that as I pitch up, the flapperons point up to push the nose down, and as I pitch down, they go down to bring the nose back up. It's very obvious from the side like this. It makes the jet incredibly stable. And of course the stabs adjust in roll and pitch at the same time. You're not going to find a better flying jet. Aside from the fact that the ESC caught fire on me, and Motion RC did actually make that right. They sent me a brand new blue one, which works really well. We've been doing all the flying today on it. Even in this crazy turbulent wind with AS3X Plus, ESC's handled out just fine. Not that the turbulence has anything to do with that. I'm just saying it. Anyway, the point being, freaking love this jet. If you guys want one for yourself, non-affiliate link below. We don't make money recommending this jet, but if you don't get this jet, you're really missing out. It is amazing. Lights are incredible, although don't leave the lights on for too long on the bench because these things get hot and they will melt the foam.
Let's cover the work needed to make this jet perform the way you're seeing it in this video. There's only a few mods that I'm going to suggest to you, and the biggest mod is going to be extending the tray. Start with a piece of basswood that you might pick up from your local hobby shop. Cut it up into a couple of stringers that are about the same width as the front battery tray between the edge of the wood and the hole for the slot that the strap goes into. Once you cut the stringers, use them as a template on the foam and cut an outline of the wood into the foam. Then pull the foam out, then insert the stringers and make sure that they're flush with the foam. Then glue that with thick CA and activate it. Then lay a bead of medium CA around the edges of the wood stringers to make that stronger than the foam itself. If you're like me, you've got some leftover wooden Freewing or FMS trays laying around from a couple of wrecks that you might have had. Cut one of those to size, put in a battery strap, screw it into the wooden stringers, then fill the screw holes with thin CA, then secure it with the screws again. Voila! You've got 2 battery straps now, and you can hit 40mm behind the marks without any tail weight. Next, use a Dremel cutoff wheel and cut a long thin notch like you see here into the plastic bulkhead directly below the canopy latch. Push the second antenna into there. You'll get perfect reception and the antenna will be out of the way. If you use tape instead, chances are the canopy will peel it off eventually. The cutoff wheel method works better here. Hi-Tech HS85 MG servos are a drop-in replacement. I suggest using Dubrow servo arms too. You'll find all of this equipment in the description below. The speed, torque, and throw of the Hi-Tech servos make them an ideal replacement for the stock units. Since I highly recommend running a Spektrum gyro here, make sure that you go into the other settings menu in forward programming and change the frame rate to 22 milliseconds. AS3X defaults to 11 milliseconds for stabilized channels. Analog Hi-Tech servos don't like this. You can see the difference when the jet initializes. Moving on to setup, there's a couple of prerequisites. First, before you proceed with this video, I need to clarify that this is an advanced setup in terms of how it handles in the air. If you're not ready for it, you will crash if you're not following my recommendations exactly. I can't be held responsible for what you do with the plane, nor can I tell you what to do. All I can say is, this is what worked for me, and caution you that the values that I'm using were chosen because they work for me, as you saw in the video. They will work for you too, provided that you follow my setup instructions exactly. Step 1. Enter your aircraft type menu and ensure that you're using an Elevon A setup. This will drive the stabilator servos and allow you to trim them in both roll and pitch, using the aileron and elevator trim tabs. Step 2. Enter channel assign, then select receiver port assignment. Check and ensure that the right stabilator servo is in port 2, and that the left stabilator servo is in port 3. The left flaperon goes into port 6 and the right flaperon goes into port 7. The final assignment should be port 8 for the air brakes. Remove all 4 leads from the blue box and run them direct to the receiver in the indicated ports on screen. Use a servo tester to figure out which one is which. If you don't have a servo tester, pick up a Spektrum XBC 100 from the description below and use it to test the leads to figure out which one goes where. Step 3. In servo settings, which is not shown on screen right now, set each servo to 150 positive and 150 negative travel. Adjust the travel as needed to keep the servo arms from binding. Test the control authority and make sure that you've leveled out the stabilators according to the manual's recommendation. Step 4. Enter the flap system and set the values to 0% for position 0, negative 33% and 0% for position 1. and negative 67% and negative 2% for position 2. Set the flap timing to 5 seconds. Step 5. Enter the mixing tab and set up the following mixes. Mix 1. Flap system to AX2. This causes the right flaperon to be controlled by the flap system when you throw the flap switch. Disabling it is not recommended. Mix 2. Throttle to gain mix. This controls the gains in flight and is governed by both the throttle and the flap position. Takeoff flaps increases gains around landing thrust. Landing flaps increases gains significantly around landing thrust. During normal flight, this mix keeps the jet's gyro system optimized for different airspeeds that it can reach. Mix 3 and 4, elevator to flaperons. This doesn't need to be a curved mix like you're seeing here, but I made it one just to customize it later if I wanted to. Set the endpoints of the mix to negative 80 and positive 80 so that the flaperon moves down as you pull the stick back and it moves up as you push the stick forward. This will be needed to program the gyro later using the auxiliary setup wizard so that you can get the flaperons to stabilize in both roll and pitch. You'll need to duplicate this mix and invert the values for the right flaperon channel AX2. Mix 5. Aileron system to flaperon control. To make the flaperons operate and roll, you need 2 mixes. The left flaperon mix is on screen, with all the info that you need. If you don't enable this mix for both flaperons, you won't get roll on them when you command it. We're moving to rates here too, because I'm using 125% rates for aileron and elevator control to make the servos move to their full extent. This is why I'm using 80% mixing for the flaperons. Elevon wing types do some pre-mixing, which dampens a little bit of the control authority that I want out of the plane. 70% expo is almost required to fly it well, even with the gyro helping out. This is part of why it's an advanced setup, but also because there's no ability to dampen the stabilator roll authority except by using the gyro, which will be covered here in a few. Step 6. Go to servo setup and change the servo speed for the air brake servo to 1 second for extending and closing the air brake. This will disrupt the air smoothly and give you a moment or two to regain control if any issues arise. For the AS3X gains used here on this setup, I have 1X master gain, 35 roll, 90 pitch, and 45 yaw. Lock rate is 60 roll, default, pitch, and yaw. Release rate is default. Priority is 100 for all axes, making the jet feel like it's under the control of a flight computer just like the full-scale F-16. It's super agile and easy to fly like this, provided that you set it up the way that I did. I must stress one more time that every step in this video needs to be copied to perform like you're seeing on screen here. This includes the servos that I used and the gain values that I'm using. If you want a simpler F-16 setup, you can try following the guide in my F-16 maiden video linked below as well. By the way, I'm also including the setup files for the F-16 in both IX and NX radio format, so if you want to skip the meticulous info that I just presented to you and literally slaved over just for you, and just get the plugging things in and enjoying it, go ahead and hop on the TBRC Discord server and grab them whenever you're ready. If you appreciate these kinds of in-depth reviews and saving you a bunch of time with pre-made setups, I'd appreciate you so much if you could consider smashing that super thanks button and hit the like button too while you're at it. If you run into any setup issues with the F-16, swing by Discord and don't be afraid to ask for help. We've got a fun, friendly, and inclusive community, and that's welcoming to pilots of all skill levels. All we ask is that you be willing to learn and share your knowledge. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys again next week.